It's 9/16/2024. Week 4 of college football is in the building. Level Up College Football Podcast. Andy P, Sarah C, and Big G got the round table going on for college football. Make sure you follow us wherever you get your college football podcast on Fans First Sports Network. If it's Apple, Spotify, Google, I don't care where you listen, where you're rocking to, and you can catch us live on YouTube right now on Fans First Sports Network. But before we get to the show, before we get to the chatter in the chat, I got to say what's up to my co-hosts. What's cracking, lacking, Andy, in the building for, man, it's week 4. Can you believe it, bro?
Cannot believe that we're already down in week 4 right now. But the weird thing, I remember that we were talking about this before the season started. Most teams are going to be getting 2 bye weeks this year instead of 1 bye week. This week was the first of Syracuse's bye weeks. There was also a lot of other teams kind of on that early bye. It's just going to feel a little bit weird to have 2 weeks in the season where your team's not playing. It's still something I haven't quite processed, but it was nice to see. Like, I just had the quad box going. I didn't have to have like one game on the TV and then a couple other smaller games going. It was nice to have lots of games going, bop around. But yeah, it is. I cannot believe we're already a quarter of the way done with the season. Cannot believe it.
Man, I can't believe it either. Sarah, what's cracking lacking, man? From a different location, different spot. What's going on with you?
Nothing much. It's been quite the week, though, so far. I'm going to say I'm really enjoying watching a lot of this season so far. There's been a lot of surprises, a lot of interesting teams out there. And I do agree that any of the bye weeks is a little weird because I feel like the rankings are really like shifting a lot because of that.
Yeah.
And then it's going to be like, what's going to happen next week? So that's been interesting to have a look at week to week when this happens.
Yeah.
So I'm excited.
Absolutely.
It's been super exciting so far.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be some big bias out there with the rankings. We're going to get to that here in a little bit when we talk about it, man, because it's ridiculous what they do in the teams. But before we get to it, we got to have a real conversation about what's going on in the state of Florida. There is some things going on that I have never in my lifetime, and just let me be perfectly clear. Since 1969, we have not had the Florida and Florida Gators, one start out 1-2 and one start out on 3. So it's madness going on in Tallahassee and Gainesville, right? And y'all, I just want to know from the panel, from y'all, from the live chat, who's cooked first? Is Norvell up out of here? I mean, y'all got to talk to me and tell me, because I'm telling you, somebody is losing their job. And by the way, I heard a rumor that the Florida and athletic boosters got together and put it out there in the USA Today that they're meeting to call for Norvell's job. So y'all, I mean, not Norvell, Napier. They're calling for Napier's job. So I just want to know from the panel, from y'all, who's cooked first? Andy, I'm going to shoot it to you, man. It's bad news down there in Gainesville, Tallahassee, bro.
I mean, the crazy part here is that if you asked me before the year, Billy Napier was always my number 1 pick to get fired. And while we do have this report about boosters, the reporting from many plugged-in people around Florida, specifically, I'm looking at Richard Johnson. He's a CBS Sports college football writer, went to the University of Florida. He's been saying that the university doesn't want to evaluate him until after year 4. Like, they want to give him a next year. They really like what he's building down there. The other part of it is that Napier is still involved with that lawsuit with the former Florida recruit about all the NIL violations, or whether or not promising NIL and then not delivering it is actually illegal or not. So he and the university are kind of tied up together in that, which is why I honestly think that Mike Norvell might be on a hotter seat right now, because Norvell just lost to Memphis, his old program, which they showed a graphic during the ESPN game. In the years since Mike Norvell has left Memphis, they have the exact same record as a program. The only difference is they don't have the conference championship that Norvell won his last year there at Memphis. Otherwise, This Memphis program is doing exactly the same stuff that Norvell did when he was there. And as we saw this week, I think there's a good chance that Memphis is now in contention for that group of 5 playoff spot that's available to a non-Power 4 team. So if you're in a situation where at the end of the year, Memphis has basically done exactly the same, you look at Mike Norvell and you go like, what are you doing special here? Like last year's Florida State team, very, very good. But he basically plugged in the same formula this year and the team is terrible. And so now your question is, did Mike Norvell just get lucky? And so for me, I'm looking at the situation saying there seems to be more institutional backing for Napier versus Norvell, who we know Florida State alumni, they turn on you in a second. And an 0-3 start is just unacceptable considering who they've played just to start this season.
Yeah. Sarah, same question. But see, you wasn't here when me and Andy talked about this. We knew, me and Andy talked about this months ago. We knew when the schedules came out and we looked at it. And I remember, Andy, us looking and was like, dog, when does he win a game? Talking about Napier, Now looking at it, okay, he's going to get to Florida. He's going to get maybe Mississippi State. He got Sanford, and he might win Florida State, but that's it. So I just want to know, you're coming into it late as far as the conversation with us. But do you think either one of them got a shot to keep a job or do they both get fired? What's your thoughts about both of these Florida coaches being up out of there?
Okay, so a little background to me. I lived a small amount of period of time in South Florida. Even though it's a different part of Florida, there are still a bunch of Gators fans and there are a bunch of Seminoles fans. And I was around that my entire childhood. And I at first wanted to be a Seminole, ended up changing my mind. But the fans are diehard. And I don't know. There's this one thing Napier said like 2 weeks ago when he's like, the guy in the basement who wants to have comments, honey, you're in Florida. They don't have basements. You don't know your fan base a little bit. I feel like that might be just a little bit more of a problem, in my opinion, for those fans. I don't know. I feel like with the boosters raising money just to fire him, kind of seems like they're going to put a little bit more pressure on the university. But I would not be surprised if they both go. I think that Norvell did awful with the transfer portal this offseason. Why did you think this quarterback was going to be your savior? Because he hasn't really been anyone else's. So I can see both of you guys' side, but yeah, I'm with both. Go beyond.
Hey, so I got to ask this question to both of you guys too, because I think there's a little background played in both situations. What I'm hearing is the issue that Deion Sanders is going to become the Florida State coach, right? And then I'm also hearing that the reason why they won't get rid of Napier is because his connections to DJ Langway, who was, by the way, the number 1 high school quarterback in the country last year, right? Who's currently at Florida, and he's trying to decide on whether or not he's going to make him a full-time starter. He's already played, looked serviceable, but then looked bad at times. So with that being said, does that play a part in whether or not a coach's move? Because, if Langway walks out the door, I'm telling you, everybody that's connected to him in that program's going with him, right? And then you talking about starting over. They're starting over in Gainesville. But whereas if they get rid of Napier, who's been, not Napier, Norvell, who's been doing good at Florida State, should have been in a poll last year. They don't really have the players right now. But bringing in a guy like Prime, does that give them a chance? So I want to get you guys' thoughts. Which way does that weigh? Does that weigh towards one guy being a coach and one guy not? Sarah, I'm going to start with you first. Do you think those are factors?
Oh, I 100% think those are factors, especially when it comes to bringing in a big name that is going to bring some big names coming with him for Florida State. They haven't, last year they felt jilted and they were mad. Yeah. And then they come into this year thinking, oh, we're going to prove ourselves. We're going to do it. And they haven't. And those fans are not patient. And I would say, I would agree with almost exactly what you're saying. I think Norvell is much more on the hot seat. I watched his press conference this past week. Doesn't seem confident. Just it's hard to watch almost, really, truly,
Oh,
in coming from being such a big football fan. So.
wow, got it, Andy. Which way does it swing, man? Because this is some critical stuff, you know.
I mean, look, in the modern era, like we're talking since World War II, there has never been a coach at the University of Florida who has started his career with 3 straight losing seasons. So, like, at the end of the day, Billy Napier, if that's what you do this year, which, by the way, ESPN's FPI projects Florida to finish this season with a 3-9 record. If that were to happen, there is no way you can keep Napier around, and you just need to bring in the biggest name that you can find available to come in and try to salvage it. But it's Florida. You should be able to recruit incredibly well there. Now, on the Florida State side, I do think the problem with the prime is going to be, or with the prime of it all, is going to be the fact that Colorado did not look great against Colorado State. I know they won. I know Shadur threw for 4 touchdowns, but it doesn't seem like Dion has had much luck finding a good offensive coordinator. They're still basically running an outdated air raid system that college football made obsolete in the last 5 years. They still are having issues building an offensive line, which is also the issue with this Florida State team. I don't think prime fixes anything for you, but I do think that you're in a situation at Florida State where this is such a momentum killer for them, because this isn't just about this year. This is about missing out on the college football playoff. That's Sarah brought up a great point. One of the things that I got to criticize Mike Norvell on is that his body language is just absolutely atrocious. We saw it after they missed the playoff. He looked shell-shocked, and the entire team is looking at him, and he just looks stunned. He very and I get it. It's a tough time, but you're the leader of the program, and it's kind of coaching 101. You have to leave your emotions at the door, and you have to be the thing that everybody rallies around. And Norvell right now just doesn't look like he has that. I just wonder if you're maybe looking, if you're Florida State, there are so many good so many good branches right now off that Kirby Smart tree. If you take look at what Syracuse is doing. That's a former Kirby Smart assistant. Look at what Georgia State is doing. And the win that they just had, that's another former Kirby Smart assistant here.
Yeah.
You get a guy, oh my goodness, I'm blanking on their OC's name here, but Mike Bobo. Mike Bobo is a guy who's got ties to Florida. I'm not saying that he's the guy that fixes Florida State, but that's a 2-3 year interim stopgap there. That makes a ton of sense. That kind of stabilizes everything. I'm kind of with Sarah here. I think at the end of the year, both of these jobs are going to be open. And that is probably the biggest surprise to me so far of this season, is just that we kind of came into this year thinking that the state of Florida was going to have a renaissance this year. And they are easily the worst state when it comes to their major college football programs.
Absolutely. Who would have thought the UCF would be better than the Miami Hurricanes, and the Miami Hurricanes would be better than the Gators and the Seminoles based on what happened last season. So absolutely get it, bro. Hey, so listen, we're going to just switch topics. We're going to talk a little bit about a review of what we did last week. Andy, listen, our picks, now with Sarah C joining the squad, man, we're on fire. Anybody that does sports betting and understands and listens to us about what we talk about in review with games and all whatever else, we pick them. Now, I admit, and I'm not going to place blame, but South Carolina had LSU whooped. They had them whooped. If they don't lose that quarterback, I'm undefeated for the week again. Right? So I took the L, dog, and I think Andy, you and Sarah, y'all was like, nah, LSU's just going to do it. But I'll take the one loss. But outside of that, one loss here or there, when we're doing 5 and 6 games a week, is outstanding. So I just want to get you guys this week in review about who you think is just having a red-hot season and who's the biggest surprise in going to week 4 of the college football season. Andy, I'm going to come to you first, bro. Who do you got? It's just they're red-hot right off the bat, and they're just a big surprise.
I mean, we're gonna talk about both. We're gonna talk about a lot of these teams a little bit later on in the show, so I'll keep it short and sweet here. But I think that the biggest surprise that I have is that the Big 12 race has really solidified. We are looking at what we thought was maybe a 4 or 5 team race. This is a 2-team race between Kansas State and Oklahoma State. Like, I am genuinely impressed with Avery Johnson. Shout out Afton. Like, I know that you've been believing in the Wildcats and believing in Avery Johnson, but this is a situation where now that Cam Rising may or may not have an injury again, there are only 2 teams in the Big 12 that look head and shoulders better than anybody else. And unlike in the beginning of the season where I thought the Big 12 was going to be, the one of the top 4 protected seeds that would just lose in the first round.
Yeah.
Oklahoma State is getting it out of second gear, but they've got, impressive wins so far. Kansas State blew out an Arizona team with a defensive effort that I thought was the most impressive aspect of the whole game here.
Yeah.
I am genuinely surprised that the Big 12 is not more wide open, but also I'm here to give Kansas State their flowers, man. Like, they are clearly setting themselves up as the best all-around team in the league, and Oklahoma State is setting themselves up as the team with potentially the highest ceiling if they can figure out how to work through some of their offensive issues.
Yeah, got it. Sarah, your big surprise off of week 3, who's red hot and who did you was like, when you looked at the beginning, you were like, no way they're going to be 3-0 or be in contention right away for a possible playoff berth concerning college football this season?
There's a couple that I found a little bit surprising. I think that at the LSU, I know they went 3-0. Sorry. Oregon is probably the biggest surprise when still 3-0 after the first 2 weeks. I thought Dylan Gabriel played a beautiful game. I think he's finally starting to show what he can do, and they were super explosive, 27-0 in their second half. Like, they didn't even flinch with this big of a rivalry game. I really was genuinely surprised. There's a couple little surprises. Of course, there was the game of the week that we kind of thought of later on. I think the biggest surprise, though, is Georgia winning by a point to Kentucky.
Oh.
I don't know. I can see why. Again, the rankings, and that's why it changed. Kentucky lost to South Carolina. South Carolina looked great this week, absolutely amazing. And 100% Sellers would, if he would have stayed healthy, they would have blown LSU out of the water. But LSU knew what they needed to do, and they won. And I know that, but that shows Georgia's resilience. So I think I agree with the Big 12. I kind of like a little bit though that UCF. I kind of want to see where their offense can go with that. I think the SEC is super heavy. I think that the Big 10 and the ACC are starting to separate more along with the Big 12. So those are some of my insights from the week, but I was impressed with a lot of the top teams this week.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to give love to Pitt and Syracuse right off the bat. Both of them starting out 3-0. Pitt, outstanding game in the backyard brawl against West Virginia. One of the best games. Matter of fact, the game of the week to me over this last week. But to be honest, people can call me being a homer and all whatever else. My biggest surprise right now is the Nebraska Cornhuskers are 3-0.
Yeah.
I listen. Dylan Raiola is a difference maker. Dylan Raiola, ladies and gentlemen, is baby Pat Mahomes. He walks like him. He talks like him. He plays like him. He strategizes like him. He
wears his number.
He wears his number. He's got his haircut. Listen, people saying it's creepy, and I have to remind people, do you guys remember Kobe Bryant? Do you remember what Kobe Bryant did when he was on his way to the league and how it was Jordan everything? We're seeing this happen all over again with a kid playing quarterback in Nebraska. And I'm telling you, do not be shocked if Nebraska, because it's a top 25 matchup. Nebraska plays Illinois this week, and if Nebraska some kind of way can beat Illinois, they will be 7-0 going in Ohio State. And I'm telling you right now, them Cornhuskers are waiting for an eruption for a program, and they got one in a quarterback. And so I'm shocked at how fast Matt Rule was able to take this team and turn them into a contender that fast. I think they're good in the trenches, but Nebraska's nasty, man. Right. So before we get to the commercial break, Andy, any thoughts about any surprises in the top 10? And Sarah, I'll ask you.
I'm surprised people gave up on Georgia that quickly, but Texas has been very good. I think all season long, as long as you give me some top 5 combination that includes Texas, Bama, Ohio State, Tennessee, Georgia, I'm going to be okay. I think those are the 5 best teams in the country by a pretty clear margin. And those, any one of those teams could be number 1 at any point in time this season, and you wouldn't buy it. I'm just kind of surprised about how quickly the voters were willing to drop Georgia, considering that they did have the big marquee win in week 1.
Yeah. Sarah, any surprises in your top 10?
I mean, I agree with that. I think that personally why I think Texas may have gotten that little bit of a jump is the way that Manning came in and played lights out. When you can look at the fact that Ewers went out and threw 2 touchdowns and then gets hurt, and then Manning comes in and, scores 4 more. I think that kind of jumped them a little bit above Georgia, knowing that they can put on a show with their 2 Heisman favorite quarterbacks in the end, one year or the other. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if Manning will do it this year, but he's going to be 1 year because, I mean, I know it wasn't against the greatest opponent, but he looked just polished. He looked in charge. He just looks like a great, quarterback back there. And I was definitely impressed. I was a little bit surprised that Penn State's still in the top a little bit. I don't really know what they've really, I mean, the WVU win doesn't look as impressive anymore.
Yeah.
So the fact that they're still in the top 10 and some of those other schools that are below them are looking a lot more impressive. Those are probably my 2 biggest takeaways from the new numbers. But again, with these bye weeks, who the heck knows who's going to be at the bottom now? I mean, Northern Illinois jumped up again. So that's really starting to look interesting down there at the bottom.
Yeah, big facts. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you all for listening to us live on YouTube. If you're listening to us wherever you get your audio podcast, Spotify, Google, Apple, wherever you listen to it, we're going to be right back. We're going to pause for the calls on the Level Up College Football Podcast. YouTube will be back in a second. Andy, let's take the break, bro. And we're back with the Level Up College Football Podcast, live in the building. Andy P., Sarah C., Big G, Fans First Sports Network, talking a little college football. Guys, it's been a great football season. Great to have all you guys in the building. And listen, thanks for all the people that watch us live on the live chat. We appreciate you guys for sure. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we got to start talking about the games. I referenced it already. The number 24 ranked Illinois Fighting Illini, who has a very good defense, will face Nebraska, who I think has finally found a quarterback. Your thoughts, Andy? You know how we do it on the Level Up Podcast. Illinois, Nebraska favored almost by 9. What's going on, Andy?
This is a weird one right now. Like, again, we're recording this on Monday, so it's still really early in the week. We can see these lines move a little bit, but when I put together my game, notes, looking at 75% of all bets on the spread on Illinois. So a lot of people here are thinking that this is too big of a number. They think it's going to be a closer game than what Vegas says. And what I will say is that there's a reason for this. When you kind of take a look at the counting stats, when you look at the offensive efficiency metrics, when you look at the total offensive numbers, strength of schedule, these two teams are about dead even, like pretty much across the board. They match up almost identical. The difference, and this is to me, I think, going to be the biggest takeaway of this game, SP Plus, ESPN's advanced stats metric, they love the Nebraska defense. The Nebraska defense is the 3rd ranked defense by their metric in the entire country versus Illinois' offense, which is only the 70th ranked offense in the country. To me, that is really setting up for a game where if Nebraska can do anything on the ground, which they've had, like Raiola has been great this year, but they haven't run the ball especially well. If Nebraska is able to run the ball at all this week, it seems as if Nebraska's defense is going to be in position to really stifle Illinois' offense, play a very field position game, ensure that Dylan Raiola isn't put into too many stressful situations because they're always going to have that plus field position here. And I think that I can understand where you start getting this big number from. It just feels as if, if you're a big believer in defense wins championships here, this is a game that Nebraska, especially at home, matches up really well against Illinois.
Man, Sarah, can Illinois pull the upset as Nebraska for real? That's just, let's just get to the chase and get to the point. What you digging about this game?
I am on the Nebraska bandwagon. I have been watching them since week. I've been listening to Matt Rule. I think that he's such a big football guy. He wants his, offensive line, defensive line. Those are his factors. And then Raiola coming in and him just loving him and like embracing him and like giving him all the opportunities to kind of be a little bit, adventurous and all that kind of stuff. But that defense on Nebraska, they already have, 9 sacks in the past couple games, and they are going up against a pretty like middle of the road type of offense. Like they're not bad. Altmaier doesn't take a lot of chances. So, yeah. I mean, you're not going to see a lot of big plays against them, but I think that they're going to be stifling them on there. And I just don't see them getting past them I don't see maybe the line going 8.5, but I'm not seeing them pulling any form of an upset. And I'd say at least a touchdown. Okay. But, if Raiola has a good day, and we got a couple. So We'll see. It'll be interesting to see him against a decent defense.
Absolutely. So I'm buying what y'all selling about Nebraska. Maybe that's biased too, because to be honest, Dylan Raiola should have been playing quarterback for Ohio State this season. But, the carousel that was him in the offseason by him transferring high schools, accepting official college, letters saying I'm verbally committed to that one, this one, and that one, and finally landing in Nebraska with his dad. I think that Matt Rule and that climate in Lincoln is a perfect place for him because there's no other distractions. There's nobody else around, and the show is all about Nebraska. If you're saying that there's a state that's more behind any college football team in America, the Nebraska Cornhuskers travel and is down with their team. And when they start that tidal wave, I've been around long enough to remember the Tommy Frazier days when they were unstoppable. So I think this is the rebirth of the remix of the Nebraska program. So I'll start it off by saying it right off the bat. Nebraska dusts Illinois. 35-17 blowout. Raiola throws 3 touchdown passes. They blow them out. So I'm letting you know right now, I'm standing with Nebraska because I think they're for real. Sarah, what's your score and what you thinking about the game?
So I said I don't know for sure if we're going to see a bunch of points. I would like to see Raiola really have a really great game. I went closer to like a 20-27 game. I still think Altmaier at least has a little bit into him. So it'll be interesting to see what that defense, if they can't get on in that end zone though, within the first in the first half, they're done. Like there's no happening. They're going to get pummeled and crushed. And I really enjoyed watching them. So I'll be excited to see Roll celebrating in the end with his kegs and eggs.
Got it. Andy P, man, what you calling for a score, bro?
I am with you, Big G. I think Nebraska's the better team by a pretty decent margin here. So I'm going to go Nebraska 27, Illinois 17. I think we get a 10-point game here. But I do think that, I don't think Raiola opens it up, but I do think that Raiola looks good and continues to be a very solid first-year freshman quarterback here.
Got it. All right, y'all. This might be the game of the week. Matter of fact, I think this is going to be the game that's going to tell the story about what's going on with one particular program. We got the USC Trojans coming to the 18th ranked Michigan Wolverines, who said that they've solved it. And by the way, breaking news came out today. They have replaced their quarterback, and Orji will be starting quarterback for Michigan moving forward with the program, right? I think this is a make and break game for the Wolverines. And you got them Trojan boys who's talking about they back too. This game ain't invade Ann Arbor. I was there 2 weeks ago. I know what it's like. Andy, I'm gonna start with you, bro. Is the Trojan boys for real?
This is a fun game here because I do think that the USC offense is for real. S&P Plus has them as the 4th ranked offense, which is really interesting because we again, this is a real weird matchup when you're looking at strength v strength. Michigan still has the 4th ranked defense in SP Plus, so you got the 4th ranked offense going against the 4th ranked defense. On the other side of it, Michigan's offense is 70th in the country, 7-0. Yeah. USC's defense is also 70th, 7-0.
Yeah.
So we've got one each side lines up. It's like the difficulty is like leveled out. It's like when you're playing a video game and everybody goes even teams. That's what you're kind of looking at here. So for me, the Alex Orji is really interesting because what we've seen so far has been a very one-dimensional Michigan offense with Alex Orji on the field. They're not trying to throw the ball down the field. They're not even trying to throw the ball to either side of the hashes. If the ball is lined up on one side or whatever, the only throw is going to be towards the boundary. He is not going to far side. They do not trust his arm to even do that minimal level of quarterbacking here. So for me, the real key here is going to be the Michigan offensive line. So PFF, this was the strength of Michigan the last few seasons. This was the strength under Harbaugh. This was supposed to be the strength under Sharon Moore. But according to PFF, who does the college player grading system, there is not a single player on the Michigan offensive line with an above average grade so far this season. This is a unit that has tremendously underperformed based off of expectations. And if you were going to put Alex Orji at the quarterback spot, USC is going to stack 7 in the box every single time and attack that offensive line. So it's going to come down to, can Michigan win the battle of the trenches on the offensive side of the ball, which is something that they have not been able to do this year. So for me, I'm looking at this and I'm looking at, I don't love the USC defense here, but if they're going up against a one-dimensional offense that cannot block, man, you don't need to be a good defense in order to win that matchup.
I ain't mad at you. Sarah, your thoughts concerning the Wolverines against them Trojan boys up there in Ann Arbor?
I wish I had a lot more to add. I don't have a lot more to add than what Andy said. He pretty much gave most of the facts. I was just going to add the fact that it is going to be on the trenches. It's going to be running back versus running back. It's not going to be quarterback versus quarterback. It's going to be seeing which running back can get the most yards, who can get the most breakaways, and who's going to actually get into that end zone. I think that's literally the only two things that they're even at, into an extent. They are just not playing to the top end of that Big Ten. I don't see them performing super, super well when they get into those heavier games, but it's going to get interesting. But I think it's going to be a matter of those two running backs and who's going to break away the most. And they both have gotten a decent amount of yards, 270 to 171. One's played one extra game. So it's going to be a test for USC. I know they're coming off week. So that's going to be another thing that I think might either be a plus or a minus. See how they recover. But there's not a lot to add right now. To those two.
Now, I'm just going to be honest, Sarah and Andy. I don't know if the Trojans travel well. It's supposed to be a noon kickoff game coming from California to Michigan. I saw them play well against LSU, which was basically a home game in Las Vegas, right? And LSU is supposed to have 2 offensive tackles to start are going to be first-round NFL draft picks. And they got pressure on LSU's quarterback. So I'm like, on one hand, yeah. But then on the other hand, is Miller Moss going to cause that many problems to the Michigan defense? Because I think if they go air raid, we all know that Ball, the cornerback, opposite of Johnson, is the weak point of Michigan's defense, right? So how much can Michigan's defense hide him, right? In scheme, do they run a lot of zone to cover his side? Do they let him man up against the Trojans wide receivers, which I think have good speed and great catching ability? So I think the game's going to be a lot closer than what I think. But at the end of the day, something is telling me Michigan's going to right the ship. So I'm going to take Michigan winning this game 27-21 against the USC Trojans. Andy, your pick. Who you got?
I just can't get there, Big G. I think at some point in time, whoever wins this game is going to be overranked as hell. You're looking at USC. If they win this game, they're going to be in the top 10. They're not a top 10 team. Michigan wins this game, they're going to be a top 15 team. They're not a top 15 team. But I do think the Trojans win this one. I think that we get USC 30, Michigan 20. I think I think Alex Orji gets a couple of explosive running plays. He's elusive. He's still a really good runner, but I cannot buy a Michigan team that has just looked so bad on offense every single game so far.
I got it. Sarah, who you got?
I'm going USC, and I'm going 28-14. I think that, Mullins has got about 2 touchdowns in him, and I think that's going to be about it. I don't really know what this Orgy can do yet. I'm intrigued to see. But that offensive line and beyond that, they just haven't protected their quarterback yet, and now you're putting in someone new in a system. So good luck.
Yeah, I got it. All right, one more game before we take a break, and I think this is the game of the week. The Tennessee Volunteers, that young man Nico, is about to put his game on the road and go down there to Oklahoma. And by the way, we got great matchups this week. Every game we're showing you is a ranked opponent versus a ranked opponent. But we're going to find out a lot about them Volunteer boys when they travel to Norman, Oklahoma this week to take on the Oklahoma Sooners. Andy, I heard they're breaking out the all-black Jordan outfits for Oklahoma. I'm hearing it. And when Oklahoma gets in all black, it's something special. So is this the game where Oklahoma says, listen, we are a team to be reckoned with as far as the SEC is concerned? Or is Nico about to go on a Heisman run?
I'll tell you this. One of the most disappointing things about Oklahoma so far has been that Brett Venables has not gotten this defense to the levels that it was when he was at Clemson. Part of that is because he's now the head coach. I think he's actually taking a step back and he's running it the way Dabo runs it, where he's more of a CEO type than actually involved with any X's and O's.
Facts.
But you would expect a team coached by Venables to have better defense than Oklahoma's had so far. And I'll tell you this. SP Plus loves Tennessee, has them as the 7th ranked team in the country. PFF loves Tennessee, has them as the 8th best graded team in the entire country. It's just really hard to look at this Oklahoma team. I know it's a road game in the SEC. I know they're going to be wearing the all black. This is a game where if Tennessee is really going to compete for the, be that upper echelon, if they're going to be in consideration to be a true college football contender, they have to win this game. And for me, it comes down to, can they make the explosive plays? Because Venables is going to do everything in his power to basically force Tennessee to be slow, to just take the check down as opposed to taking the deep guy, because that's what makes Tennessee's offense run. When Tennessee's offense is running, you cannot stop the big explosive plays. Venables might try to make this a slow, low-scoring game here. And to me, does Tennessee have the X factors, just the guys who can just go one-on-one and beat their guys? That, to me, is going to decide if the Volunteers can cover the spread and win this game outright.
Sarah, what factors do you got between Oklahoma and Tennessee this week? Because I got some little stuff, but I just want to hear what you got to say concerning this game.
So from what, Andy said, Tennessee is going to need those explosions. Oklahoma seems to start off super, super strong in the beginning and kind of taper themselves off. So then they kind of want to keep the lead. And I still think their defense is doing pretty decent. They have 11 sacks already for the season. So if they can get to Nico, that's going to probably cause a lot of problems. And that will be a lot of on the rushing attack, though, too, then. So then you can, pass off your ball to the running back, which seems to be doing pretty well also on that end. This is a weird little stat, and this is just because of the fact that I am obsessed with Pat McAfee. Sadly, He was saying on game day, every time they go to the home stadium so far this season, they have lost. So I could see the possibility this being the one that can either change the pattern or just continue that pattern, because Tennessee definitely does have a legit offense, and Nico has only thrown for 2 interceptions, and that was against the only ranked team they played against. So it's going to be about how much pressure they can put on him versus how much explosion you can get out of him. So this is definitely going to be the game I'm going to be having on my main screen. So but so that's all I got.
Got it. So I'm saying Dallas Sampson, I think, is going to be the difference in the game for the Tennessee Volunteers. I think that kid's got like almost 400 yards rushing for Tennessee. And I think that takes all the pressure in the world off of Nico. Where adversely, for Oklahoma Sooners, Jackson Arnold is the leading passer and the leading rusher for Oklahoma. Do the Oklahoma even have a running back? Do they have a running game at all? And I think that's where it comes down to, because I think when things get tough and tight, you got to have a running game, and you got to be able to stop the run. And I think that's why Tennessee is going to go on the road, and I think dust Oklahoma off. I'm calling for Tennessee to get 40 points. So give me 40-21 against Oklahoma. Tennessee says, Oklahoma, welcome to the Big Ten. I mean, the SEC. Andy, your score for the game, bro.
Yeah, I'm going back and forth here. I think it'll be a little bit closer than we're expecting. Again, I'm going to give Brett Venables the benefit of the doubt here. Tennessee has shown the ability to lay a clunker against good defenses, but I do still think Tennessee is the better team. So I think Vegas has this one exactly right. I think it's a 7-point game. I think Tennessee wins this one 31-24. Tennessee Volunteers. They come out of Norman with the win, but we come away impressed with Oklahoma's defense, and their offense is able to do just enough to keep it close.
Got it. Sarah, your score.
I'm going that Tennessee's offense is going to expose that defense, and I agree with that whole thing with Oklahoma's offense, with that being your quarterback is your number one rusher, which is what some even NFL teams have issues with now. So the fact that it's still in college that's becoming an issue is kind of interesting. So I'm going 48-30. I think, Arnold's definitely going to get his touch, get into the end zone, but I see Nico and Sampson really blowing that defense up and really showing them what an actual real offense looks like.
Big facts. Love it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we got to pause for one last commercial break. Let's pause for the cause. If you're watching us live, just stick with us. We'll be right back. If you're listening to us, wherever you get your audio podcast, be it Google, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, we'll be right back with the Level Up College Football Podcast. And we're back with the Level Up College Football Podcast. Andy P, Sarah C, and Big G sitting in the building. Y'all been a great conversation so far. We got one of them sneaky games we got to talk about real fast. The Kansas State Wildcats got to take on an opponent that a lot of teams ain't paying attention to. A lot of national media ain't paying no attention to. Them old BYU Cougars, who has always traditionally played Kansas State tough. Andy, your thoughts concerning this game between Kansas State and BYU?
Yeah, this is a game where if Kansas State is what I think they are, they should handle this game with ease here. They've been great. Avery Johnson has had a quarterback rating of over 70, QBR by ESPN's metric. In the last 2 games, both against Tulane and Arizona, big-time opponents showing out and winning those games for him. And BYU has still shown a little bit of challenges playing physical at that power 4 level. So we saw that last year. That was the biggest challenge that BYU had. They didn't have the depth and they didn't have the physicality across all their trench positions or in their front 7. That's continued this year where they've had to win ugly against SMU, a team that has really fallen off people's expectations. And then they also struggled with Wyoming, which, like, man, I know Wyoming's a decent program, but this year's Wyoming team is not very good. To me, it just feels like K-State is clearly the better team here. But like, as you mentioned, it's on the road. You got to go to Provo. It's always a tough time there, especially at night, which is where I think you start getting a lot of cautiousness around this line, even though I think that K-State's definitively the better team here.
Got it. Sarah, can BYU upset Kansas State's path to the Big 12 championship game?
I mean, if their special teams plays like they did last week, possibly. But Kansas State seems to be really starting to get it right with Avery Johnson. The fact that he was rushing for 110 yards and he's still putting up some decent numbers in the passing game. It's going to be interesting. I have watched some BYU and night games. Definitely those crowds can get a little crazy. I think that it's going to be a closer game than we probably would hope. But I think that's just more of the fact that it's going to be where it is, when it is, and Kansas State's coming off of like a bigger win, but like they really needed to work to make sure that they could pull that off. And BYU's got to put up a little bit of a fight. They always like to put a little bit, of their name out there, even whenever they're not in the conversation. So I'm definitely going with Kansas State, but I definitely think it's going to be a fun game more than anything.
I totally agree. I think this is going to be like one of those games we look back and it's like, man, that might have been one of the games of the season. I like Kansas State. I think that Avery Johnson is the difference maker. I think he's quietly having an outstanding season. But I wouldn't be shocked if this game ended up 27-24 Kansas State. And that's the score I'm picking. I'm saying Kansas State is close. I think BYU gets a special teams touchdown, or maybe a block punt or something's going to happen. They might run a fake punt and score a touchdown. Now, who knows? And they're going to keep it close. But I just think in the end, Kansas has too many hogs. Andy, your score, bro.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit here. I think that Kansas State's going to come out and whoop BYU. I think they're just I think they're a much better program. I like Kansas State to win this one 34-14. I just don't think it's close at all.
Ooh, you said to put some respect on their name. Sarah, what are you talking about as far as Kansas State and BYU in the final score?
I definitely say that Kansas State's going to win. I just don't know how many numbers we're going to be getting up there. So I went for more of a little bit of a lower score game because I definitely think that special teams is going to probably pull off some random touchdown. But I went for more of a 21-7. So definitely over the spread, but definitely not a high scoring game.
Got it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we got one last game to cover. And I think this is the preview. Well, let me just say this. The winner of this game is going to play in the Big 12 championship game. There's no doubt in my mind the winner of this game will play in the Big 12 championship game. Now, it's the Utah Utes, number 12, traveling to Stillwater to play the Oklahoma Sooners and Coach Gundy and them boys. And Ollie Gordon, who's might still be the nation's number 1 running back. So I think this game's got huge implications. Andy, I know you're going to talk a little bit about the missing Cam Rising element that might be going on. But, y'all, I want to get your thoughts concerning Utah traveling to Oklahoma State. And this game, I think, seals the deal for one of these teams in the Big 12. Andy, talk to me, bro. Tell me what you're thinking.
Yeah, we've had a lot of breaking news within the last 24 hours in regards to this game. So, again, initially, the idea here was Cam Rising had a hand injury that was not disclosed in terms of its severity. We dealt with this all last year where Cam Rising was day-to-day on the injury report and never played as he was recovering from knee surgery last season. So naturally, everything has been met with a healthy dose of skepticism. So today, the report is that Cam Rising is definitely starting this game. Again, want to be clear on the language here. Cam Rising is starting this game, but how much he plays, what the offense looks like, again, we know not to trust this Utah team. But the result was that Oklahoma State opened as a -1.5 point favorite. We've now swung all the way back to Utah being a favorite. So clearly Vegas is out here saying that if Cam Rising plays, they think that Utah is the better team than Oklahoma State. I don't know if I believe that. But if we take, again, if you look at all the numbers on paper, these are about as two even teams as you can get. So for me, it comes down to Ollie Gordon. Right now, he's only averaging 3.5 yards a carry. He's got 4 touchdowns on the year, which kind of covers up like why he doesn't have a lot of yards and why that yards per carry is low. But if you're wondering like why he's been struggling this season, out of his 195 positive rushing yards on the season, 155 of them have come after contact, meaning he is getting hit behind the line of scrimmage with far too much consistency. The offensive line is not doing what it needs to do. Their scheme is not really utilizing everybody effectively here. Again, we know that there was stuff that happened in the preseason in regards to Ollie Gordon's eligibility, how much he practiced. We don't know these different things. Gundy said what he said. All we know that is right now, the rushing attack of Oklahoma State was supposed to be a focal point of this offense. It's not been super efficient, even though it's been consistent. And Oklahoma State has still put up points. I don't know if they're a better team than Utah. I do think that they have the best player in this game, though.
Got it. Sarah, who you like between Utah and Oklahoma State?
Well, it's veteran quarterback versus veteran quarterback, as Rising actually is going to start. So I would be a little bit more trustworthy if Rising was starting, because he definitely has the presence back there versus Bowman. But it is going to be about Gordon. They have not let him really break loose since the first game of the season, but they're still winning. So if Bowman can actually keep up with the passing game, just dribbling, who seems to be getting a decent amount of yards per game, I could see them probably pulling off a pretty nice win against Utah. But if Utah is both defensive line and offensive line, I've watched 2 weeks ago with their tackling is some of the best tackling I've seen in college football in quite a few years. I was really, really impressed. But as soon as Rising went down, that team, it was like they were skating barely on the ice without him. And he seems to be the massive like leader of that team. And when he goes down, they can't seem to know how to recover. But if Utah can keep Gordon out of that breakout zone, like you said, if they're going to be stifling him, it's going to go down to Bowman and dribbling and seeing if he can get the ball into his hands as much as he can.
I don't doubt it. You know, I call this game the Social Security Bowl because you got Alan Bowman and Cam Rising. Both of them can collect Social Security playing college football at this point. Both of these guys are like, 30, still playing college football. So, but Alan Bowman has shown growth that I didn't think you was going to see this year. Alan Bowman almost has 1,000 yards passing, 8 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, had an explosive game last week. And if he can keep this up, I think Oklahoma State's in the catbird seat to win the Big 12. So regardless of the health status or position of Cam Rising, which, like I said, he should have been in the NFL, and I don't know if he's going to play an NFL down. But I don't think that they can just out-physical Oklahoma State because I think Oklahoma State wants to play in a phone booth. So I'm going to take Oklahoma State to not just win this game, but win this game big. I think Stillwater, when they get to whacking them dang on things against the board and they pow, it's just going to be too much, man, going on down there in Stillwater, man. So give me Oklahoma State to win 35-17 against the Utah Utes. Andy, what's your score, bro?
I keep going back and forth on this one. I really am a believer in Oklahoma State in this game, but I don't love the idea of Cam. Like, if Cam Rising is healthy and plays in this game, I think Utah's the better team. He's not 100% healthy. I'm going to stick with my gut. It's in Stillwater. I'm going to take the home team here. 30-27 Oklahoma State over Utah. Close game that comes down to the wire.
Oh, okay, Sarah. We got 2 for Oklahoma State. Are you going to complete the quad? I mean, the trifecta?
I am. I'm going with the close game though too. I'm going a little bit higher scoring because I feel like if anything is going to happen in this game, those offenses have some chances. I'm going 38-35 on Oklahoma State, and I think after this win, I don't think that they are going to have much of a problem winning that Big 12. So we shall see.
Got it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we got one little thing we got to clean up before we get up out of here. You know how we do our sneaky game of the week. So, Andy, what's your underdog sneaky game of the week this week that you think that some stuff furniture can get moved around and maybe change the complexity of college football?
You know, there's a lot of really interesting games that are kind of taking place here that involve teams that may not actually be all that good, and we need to figure that out. The one that I'm watching out for is in the Big Ten. Iowa and Minnesota is going to be an ugly game. I do not advise that anybody watches this game if you like football. It's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be fun. It's going to be a defensive slugfest in a back alley. Yeah. But Iowa has shown more offensive pop this year than they've ever shown before.
Yeah.
And so if Iowa wants to be taken seriously in the Big Ten this year, they should beat Minnesota by at least a touchdown here. Most models, though, like the one that I'm looking at for SP Plus, says this game's going to end like 16-15. So really, Iowa, I'm looking at this game saying Iowa should win it, money line no matter what. But if we're looking at a new Iowa, they should pull ahead and win this one like 20-13 or 20-10 or something, and really pull ahead with that offensive game plan. So I'm watching it because I don't want to believe in Iowa. I've never been a believer in Iowa. They might make me a believer based off of how well their offense does in this game.
Andy, that's saying a lot if the Iowa Hawkeyes is going to make you a believer. Because, man, I've been riding with you for a minute, and you ain't never believed in the Iowa Hawkeyes.
I don't want to believe in them, but they're putting up 30 points of offense. Like this is a new team, new day.
Big facts, bro. Sarah, what's your sneaky game, the underdog pick of the week? Who you got this week?
So I am really want to see what Clemson can do against NC State. I know that, NC State had that rough loss, but, they came in as a ranked team. They are the only team to catch or got 2 interceptions against Nico from Tennessee. So they at least have some type of fight in them. And I don't think Clemson has really proven much of anything. Yeah, I get that they won last week, but it wasn't like they came in against a ranked team after getting crushed by Georgia. I think Dabo has a lot more to prove. And really seeing what he did this year with this team, since he didn't really make any changes at all. And I could see NC State pulling off some type of upset. It seems like every year they always seem to do at least one. So that's the game of the week that I really want to kind of keep my eye on and really see if Dabo could pull off a real win, in my opinion.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, I got a sneaky pick for y'all that I think just might happen. I think the Bowling Green State Falcons, BGSU, is going to go down there and invade the 12th man in Texas A&M and cause a lot of problems. Bowling Green State University gave Penn State fits and should have won. They had a bye week. They didn't play. So there's only 2 games on film that Texas A&M has for Bowling Green. And when I'm telling you Bowling Green's got a sneaky offense, and a lot of guys that you're going to see off their defense that's going to transfer portal and play for big-time teams next year. They got about 3 or 4 dogs over there on defense. And something is telling me in my gut that BGSU is going to go down there and with the 12th man and give them fits. So I look for the sneaky game of the week. Watch that scoreboard and pay attention to what goes on with Bowling Green State University, the Mighty Mac squad, because they already done proved that they can do some damage. Just go ask Northern Illinois. Go ask a couple of them other Mac squads and some dogs. And I think the Mac's going to give Texas A&M everything they want and can handle this week in college football. All right, y'all, we to the end. Any final thoughts, any closing thoughts from the crew of the Level Up Podcast? Andy, I'm going to shoot it to you first, bro.
Look, this is going to be, I'm doing a big thing this week. I was telling everybody before, heading up to Syracuse this weekend. If any Syracuse people are watching, hit me up on Threads, hit me up on Substack, let me know. I'll be tailgating the Friday night game starting around noon. Really looking forward. This will be the first time that I've been up in Syracuse since the pandemic. So I'm just real excited to get up there and experience the Fran Brown era, man. It's different. It's going to feel different for damn sure.
Yeah, for big facts, man. Sarah, your final thoughts before we get off the podcast today.
I'm just, I'm intrigued to see again, like I said, with these rankings, with these bye weeks. I can't wait to see what next week's going to come out with. I can't wait to see who's on top. I can't wait to see if Manning ends up, having another great game. It's going to be another really super amazing week. Every week has been entertaining. I have very much enjoyed the football that's coming out. I love what they have done, and it's fun to know, like, now going with the 12 teams, like, oh, okay, who's going to be that other one? So it's been a really enjoyable season, and I can't wait for this week, especially with all of these conference games coming up. Like in week 4, we never used to see this, so I'm excited.
Big facts. Hey, you guys, thanks again for rocking with the Level Up College Football Podcast. I would be remiss if before I get off the air, happy early birthday, Andy P. Andy's birthday is this week, man. Happy birthday to you. We ain't going to sing happy birthday, but we definitely going to say happy birthday to you. You have big time fun up there in Syracuse for sure this week, man. And don't forget to check us out every week live on the Level Up College Football Podcast on Fans First Sports Network. Check me and Andy P and all the other places you can get us across the board on Fans First Sports Network, including the Know It Alls podcast, which is broadcasted live every Sunday. For me, Andy P and Sarah C, we will holler at y'all next week. Y'all have a great one.